Picture this. You're sitting at Gate 47 in Denver International Airport, exhausted after a long business trip, clutching your first-class boarding pass like it's a golden ticket. You've saved for months to treat yourself to this luxury flight home. The champagne, the lie-flat seats, the peace and quiet you desperately need. But in the next 60 seconds, a woman in a designer knockoff blazer and oversized sunglasses is about to steal it all from you. And she's not just going to take your seat. She's going to make you look like the villain while she does it. This is the story of Margaret Whitmore. Airport Karen extraordinaire, master manipulator, and the architect of one of the most elaborate first-class theft schemes ever caught on airport CCTV. By the time this flight boards, lives will be turned upside down, security will be scrambling, and one seemingly perfect plan will unravel in the most spectacular way possible. But here's the twist. Margaret almost got away with it. Almost. It's 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and Denver International Airport is already buzzing with the controlled chaos of early risers and business travelers. The fluorescent lights cast their sterile glow across Terminal B, where hundreds of passengers shuffle toward their gates like zombies in desperate need of coffee. The air smells like cinnamon rolls from the nearby Cinnabon and jet fuel seeping through the ventilation system. At Gate 47, Flight 2847 to Miami is preparing to board. It's a full flight, completely sold out. And the gate agent, a tired-looking woman named Patricia with 20 years of airline experience under her belt, is already bracing herself for the morning rush. She's seen it all. The families with screaming toddlers, the business travelers who treat economy seats like personal insults, the passengers who somehow think they can bring a full-size suitcase as a personal item. But Patricia hasn't seen Margaret Whitmore yet. Not really. Margaret sits in the waiting area, positioned strategically near the boarding gate, but not too close. She's in her late 40s, dressed in what she hopes passes for business professional. A navy blazer that's just slightly too shiny to be real designer wear, pressed khaki pants, and sensible flats that she can move quickly in if needed. Her shoulder-length blonde hair is pulled back in a neat ponytail, and those oversized sunglasses perched on her head give her an air of someone important. Someone who belongs in first class. But Margaret's economy seat, 37B, middle seat, all the way in the back near the bathrooms, tells a different story. She clutches her phone in one hand and her economy boarding pass in the other, but her eyes aren't on either. They're locked on a young woman sitting 3 rows ahead, completely absorbed in her laptop. The woman is maybe 28, wearing designer athleisure and wireless headphones, her first-class boarding pass casually placed on the seat beside her like it's no big deal. Margaret's jaw tightens. Her fingers drum against her phone case. In her mind, a familiar narrative is already forming. Why does she get first class? What did she do to deserve it? Probably has daddy's credit card. Probably doesn't even appreciate it. People like her don't need first class. They don't understand what real struggle is. The truth is, Margaret doesn't know anything about this woman. Her name is Jessica Chen, and she's a freelance photographer flying home after a grueling 2-week assignment covering wildfires. She's exhausted. She saved for 6 months to upgrade to first class because she knew she'd need the rest. But Margaret doesn't care about Jessica's story. She's already cast her as the privileged villain in her own narrative. And that's when Margaret makes her decision. She's going to take that seat. She's earned it. Life has been unfair to her for too long. And today, she's going to balance the scales. Margaret stands up, smoothing her blazer with practiced precision. She's done this before, not the boarding pass switch, but the art of looking like she belongs somewhere she doesn't. She spent her 20s crashing hotel breakfast buffets and her 30s talking her way into VIP sections at conferences. She's learned that confidence is currency, and if you act like you're supposed to be somewhere, people rarely question you. She walks past Jessica's row, casual as can be, heading toward the bathroom corridor. Her eyes flick down. Jessica's boarding pass sits there on the seat, pristine white paper with that beautiful first-class designation printed across the top. Zone 1 boarding. Seat 3A. Window seat. The promised land. Margaret's heart races, but her face remains calm. She continues to the bathroom, giving herself a moment to think. Inside the stall, she stares at her economy boarding pass and rehearses the plan in her mind. It's simple. Wait until Jessica is distracted. Bump into her. Create confusion. Switch the passes. She won't notice until she tries to board, and by then, you'll already be settled in first class with a glass of champagne. They'll figure it's a printing error. She'll get sorted into another seat. She's young, she'll be fine in economy. And you'll finally get what you deserve. Margaret emerges from the bathroom, checking her reflection in the mirror. She adjusts her sunglasses, practices her confused but confident expression, and walks back out into the waiting area. But now there's a problem. A man has sat down next to Jessica, her boyfriend apparently, because they're holding hands and talking quietly. He's placed his backpack right next to Jessica's boarding pass, partially covering it. Margaret's plan suddenly got more complicated. But Margaret doesn't give up easily. She never has. Margaret retreats to her original seat, mind racing. Jessica and her boyfriend are talking, laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that someone is plotting to steal from them. The overhead speakers crackle. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin boarding Flight 2847 to Miami in approximately 15 minutes. We ask that all passengers remain seated until their boarding group is called. 15 minutes. Margaret has 15 minutes to execute her plan. But how? The boyfriend is a variable she hadn't counted on. She needs Jessica alone, distracted, vulnerable, and then, like a gift from the universe, or perhaps from the chaos of airport life, Jessica's boyfriend stands up. "I'm going to grab us coffee," he says, loud enough for Margaret to hear. "Oat milk latte?" Jessica nods, smiling. "You're the best." He walks off toward the Starbucks 2 gates down, leaving Jessica alone. But she's still wearing her headphones, still focused on her laptop screen. The boarding pass sits there, tantalizingly close, but Jessica's bag is right next to it. One wrong move and Jessica will notice. Margaret needs a distraction, a better one. Something that will pull Jessica's attention completely away. That's when Margaret notices the family 3 rows behind Jessica. A frazzled mother with a crying toddler, a baby carrier, and what looks like enough luggage for a month-long expedition. The toddler is having a full meltdown, screaming about wanting his iPad, and the mother looks like she's about to cry herself. Margaret sees her opportunity. Margaret approaches the frazzled mother with a concerned expression, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Oh my goodness, is there anything I can do to help? You look like you could use an extra pair of hands." The mother looks up, surprised by the kindness. "Oh, thank you, but I think we're okay. He's overtired, and we have another hour before we even board. Let me at least help you with your bags," Margaret insists, already reaching for one of the carry-ons. "Flying with little ones is so stressful. I remember when my daughter was that age." She doesn't have a daughter, but the mother doesn't know that. As Margaret makes a show of helping reorganize the family's bags, she's carefully positioned herself in the aisle, right between the family and Jessica's row. And then, with the timing of a practiced con artist, Margaret accidentally knocks over her own purse. The contents spill everywhere, wallet, tissues, loose change clattering across the floor. "Oh no!" Margaret exclaims, loud enough to draw attention. Several passengers look over, including Jessica, who removes one headphone and glances at the commotion. "I'm so sorry," Margaret says to no one in particular, dropping to her knees to collect her scattered belongings. Other passengers, including Jessica, instinctively lean forward or stand slightly to give Margaret space. Jessica sets her laptop aside and actually bends down to help pick up some of Margaret's things. "Here," Jessica says kindly, handing Margaret a lipstick that rolled near her feet. "Thank you so much," Margaret says, making eye contact, cementing the interaction. "I'm such a klutz this morning," and in that moment, that precious 3-second window when Jessica is focused on helping, when her body is turned slightly away from her seat, when her attention is divided, Margaret's hand moves with practiced precision. She doesn't take Jessica's boarding pass. Not yet. That would be too obvious, too risky. Instead, she does something more clever. She places her own economy boarding pass on Jessica's seat, slightly underneath Jessica's bag, while palming Jessica's first-class pass in the same motion. It's a magician's sleight of hand, a switch so smooth that even the CCTV cameras, recording everything from above, barely catch it. Margaret stands up, clutching her purse, thanking Jessica profusely. "You're so kind." "Thank you. Have a wonderful flight." Jessica smiles, puts her headphone back in, and returns to her laptop. She doesn't notice that the boarding pass on her seat has changed. Why would she? It's still there, isn't it? Margaret walks back to her seat, her heart pounding so hard she can hear it in her ears. In her pocket, folded carefully, is Jessica's first-class boarding pass. Seat 3A, Zone 1. She did it. Margaret sits down, forcing herself to breathe normally. Her hands are shaking slightly, so she clasps them together in her lap. Around her, the gate area continues its normal rhythm. Passengers scroll through phones. A child plays a game on a tablet. The coffee machines hiss and gurgle from the nearby cafe. No alarms, no shouts, no one rushing toward her. She did it, and no one noticed. Margaret allows herself a small smile. In 10 minutes, she'll board in Zone 1, walk right past everyone in economy, settle into Seat 3A, and enjoy the flight she deserves. Jessica will discover the switched pass when she tries to board, but by then, it will be too late. She'll cause a scene, probably, but the gate agents will just think there was a computer error. They'll reseat her somewhere in economy. She'll be upset, but she'll get over it. Young people always do. The overhead speakers crackle again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now ready to begin boarding Flight 2847 to Miami. We'll start with our first-class passengers, Zone 1, and passengers requiring extra time or traveling with small children. This is it. Margaret stands up, smoothing her blazer once more. She pulls out Jessica's boarding pass, holding it confidently, and approaches the boarding lane. Patricia, the gate agent, scans the first few passes without issue. A businessman in an expensive suit, an elderly couple holding hands, a woman with a baby. Then Margaret steps up. "Good morning," she says brightly, handing over the pass. Patricia scans it. The computer beeps its approval. "Thank you, Ms. Chen. Enjoy your flight." Margaret's heart soars. Ms. Chen. She's in. She's actually in. She walks down the jet bridge feeling like she's floating. The flight attendants greet her warmly at the aircraft door. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Chen. Seat 3A is right this way, just past the galley." And there it is, the first-class cabin. The wide leather seats, the extra legroom, the soft lighting. Margaret slides into Seat 3A next to the window, and immediately feels like she's won the lottery. She stashes her bag under the seat in front of her and settles in, trying to look like she does this every day. A flight attendant approaches with a tray. "Can I offer you something to drink before takeoff?" "Champagne? Orange juice?" "Champagne, please," Margaret says, unable to keep the triumph out of her voice. As she takes her first sip, she glances out the window at the tarmac and thinks, "I deserve this. I finally got what I deserve." But back at the gate, Jessica has just noticed something wrong. Jessica's boyfriend returns with 2 lattes and a confused expression. "There's a delay with the credit card machine, but they sorted it. Hey, why aren't you packing up?" "Didn't they call Zone 1? Jessica looks up from her laptop. "Wait, what? Already?" She reaches for her boarding pass and freezes. Her hand hovers over the paper on the seat. She picks it up, stares at it, blinks. This isn't my boarding pass." Her boyfriend leans over. "What do you mean?" "This says economy. Seat 37B, my pass was first class. Seat 3A, I had it right here." Jessica's voice rises with each word, panic creeping in. She starts frantically checking around her seat, under her bag, and her laptop case. "Are you sure you didn't put it somewhere else?" "No, it was right here. I had it right here." Someone, Jessica's eyes widen. That woman. The one who dropped her purse. She helped me pick up her stuff, and The realization hits her like ice water. She was scammed. Someone switched her boarding pass. Someone stole her first-class seat. "We need to tell them right now," her boyfriend says, already pulling her toward the gate desk where Patricia is still scanning passes for Zone 2. "Excuse me," Jessica says, trying to keep her voice calm but failing. "Someone switched my boarding pass. I had first class, Seat 3A, and now I have this." She holds up the economy pass. Patricia looks at the pass, then at Jessica, then at her computer screen with the expression of someone who has heard every complaint imaginable. "Ma'am, according to our system, you're booked in Seat 37B economy." "No, I'm not. I upgraded to first class 6 months ago. I have the receipt on my phone." Jessica is scrolling frantically now, pulling up her confirmation email. Patricia's expression softens slightly when she sees the confirmation. "Okay, let me check something." She types rapidly, frowning at her screen. "This is strange. It shows that someone has already boarded with Seat 3A under your name. The pass was scanned about 5 minutes ago." "That's impossible. I'm right here." Let me call this in, Patricia says, picking up her radio. We might have a duplicate boarding situation. On the plane, Margaret is on her second glass of champagne when she notices something odd. The flight attendants are having a hushed conversation near the galley, and one of them keeps glancing back toward the first-class cabin. Toward her. Margaret's stomach tightens. She tells herself she's being paranoid. They're probably just discussing the meal service, or gossiping about passengers. Flight attendants do that, right? But then one of the attendants approaches her. Excuse me, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass again? Margaret's throat goes dry. My boarding pass? You already checked it when I boarded. I understand, but we have a small discrepancy we need to verify. It will just take a moment. There's no refusing without looking suspicious. Margaret reaches into her pocket and hands over Jessica's boarding pass, trying to keep her hand from shaking. The flight attendant examines it, glances at her tablet, and then looks at Margaret with a new expression. And can I see your ID, please? This is the moment Margaret realizes her plan has a fatal flaw. She has Jessica's boarding pass, but her ID still says Margaret Whitmore, not Jessica Chen. It's in my bag, in the overhead bin. Do I really need to get it out? I'm afraid so, ma'am. We have a passenger at the gate claiming there's been a boarding pass mix-up, and we need to verify all passengers in first class before we can depart. Margaret's mind races. She could refuse. She could cause a scene and claim discrimination or harassment. She could pretend to faint. But there are cameras. There are witnesses. And she's trapped on an airplane with nowhere to run. Ma'am? The flight attendant prompts. There's been a mistake, Margaret says quietly. I'm sorry? This isn't my seat. There's been a mistake. Within minutes, the situation escalates beyond Margaret's worst nightmares. The flight attendant radios the gate. Patricia radios airport security. And suddenly, 2 security officers are boarding the aircraft, walking down the aisle toward seat 3A, while every passenger in first class watches with a mixture of curiosity and schadenfreude. Ma'am, I need you to come with us, the lead security officer says. He's a tall, no-nonsense man named Officer Ramirez, who has been working airport security for 15 years and has exactly 0 patience for boarding pass fraud. This is ridiculous. Margaret tries one last time. There's been a misunderstanding. I simply grabbed the wrong boarding pass at the gate. It was an honest mistake. Then you won't mind explaining why you have Jessica Chen's boarding pass but Margaret Whitmore's ID. Officer Ramirez says flatly. Please gather your belongings and exit the aircraft. The walk of shame down the jet bridge is the longest walk of Margaret's life. Every eye in first class watches her leave. She can hear the whispers starting already. The passengers who will tell this story at dinner parties for years. Remember that flight to Miami when that woman tried to steal someone's first-class seat? At the gate, Jessica is waiting with her boyfriend, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of anger and vindication. When she sees Margaret, their eyes meet. That's her, Jessica says. That's the woman who helped me pick up her things. Patricia has pulled up the CCTV footage on a tablet, and as Officer Ramirez reviews it, the whole scheme plays out in silent, damning clarity. Margaret dropping her purse, Jessica leaning down to help. Margaret's hand moving to switch the passes. The entire con, captured in perfect digital quality from 3 different camera angles. Ms. Whitmore, Officer Ramirez says, you're being detained for theft and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. But here's where the story takes another turn. Because as Officer Ramirez is reading Margaret her rights, Patricia makes a discovery on her computer that changes everything. Officer, Patricia interrupts, you need to see this. On her screen is Margaret's travel history with the airline. And it's not the first time she's been flagged. 3 months ago, Margaret was involved in a similar incident at Chicago O'Hare, a lost boarding pass that turned up in someone else's seat. The case was dropped because the other passenger didn't want to press charges and just accepted a rebooking. 6 months before that, at Atlanta's airport, Margaret claimed a computer error gave her the wrong seat and tried to upgrade herself on the spot. This isn't a one-time mistake, Patricia says quietly. This is a pattern. Officer Ramirez's expression hardens. What started as a petty theft case is now something bigger. This is organized fraud. A repeat offender who's been gaming the system for months, maybe longer. Margaret's face goes pale. She tries to speak, but no words come out. In her mind, she's frantically calculating, how many times did she do this? How many airports have footage? How much evidence is there? We're going to need you to come down to the security office, Officer Ramirez says. TSA will want to interview you, and I imagine the airline will want to review all your bookings for the past year. As Margaret is led away, the gate erupts in whispered conversations. Passengers pull out their phones to text friends. You won't believe what just happened at my gate. Someone is definitely already posting on Twitter. The story is going viral before Margaret even makes it to the security office. But back at the gate, Jessica faces her own dilemma. Patricia approaches Jessica with an apologetic smile. Ms. Chen, I am so sorry for what happened. We're going to get you back in your seat right away. The aircraft is being held for you. Jessica should feel victorious. She got her seat back. The Karen got caught. Justice prevailed. But instead, she feels exhausted and strangely hollow. She looks at the economy boarding pass, Margaret left behind, seat 37B, and thinks about how desperate someone must be to go through all that just for a few hours in first class. Can I ask you something? Jessica says to Patricia. What happens to her now? Patricia sighs. She'll likely be banned from the airline. Possibly face charges. TSA takes fraud very seriously, especially post 9/11. If they find evidence of a pattern, she could face significant fines or even jail time. Jessica nods slowly. Part of her feels satisfied. Part of her feels sad. Not sad for Margaret exactly, but sad that someone's life choices led them to this moment. You should board, her boyfriend says gently. We've held up the flight long enough. This time, when Jessica walks down the jet bridge to seat 3A, she doesn't feel quite as excited as she did earlier. The champagne the flight attendant offers tastes less celebratory. She keeps thinking about the look on Margaret's face when the security officers led her away. Not angry or defiant, but utterly defeated. In the airport security office, Margaret sits across from Officer Ramirez and a TSA agent named Sharon Kim. Between them is a laptop showing CCTV footage from today, and archived footage from Margaret's previous incidents. Walk me through your thinking today, Officer Ramirez says. Why did you do it? Margaret is silent for a long moment. Then, surprising everyone, she starts talking. And once she starts, she can't stop. Do you know what it's like? She says, her voice cracking. To watch everyone around you have things you can't afford? To work your entire life and have nothing to show for it? I'm 47 years old. I've worked retail, call centers, administrative jobs. I've done everything right. I've followed the rules, and I have nothing. No savings, no house. I can barely afford this flight to visit my sister, and I had to put it on a credit card I can't pay off. Officer Ramirez's expression doesn't change. That doesn't give you the right to steal from others. I know. Margaret snaps. Don't you think I know that? But just once, I wanted to feel what it's like. To sit in a seat that costs as much as my monthly rent. To have someone offer me champagne and treat me like I matter. Is that so terrible? Sharon Kim leans forward. Ms. Whitmore, we've identified at least 5 other incidents in the past 8 months where you've attempted similar boarding pass switches. This isn't about one bad day. This is a pattern of deliberate fraud. Margaret's face crumbles. She's caught, completely and utterly caught, and there's no talking her way out of it. What happens now? She whispers. That depends on several factors, Officer Ramirez says. The airline will decide whether to press charges. TSA will determine if you've violated federal aviation security laws, and the other passengers you've defrauded will have the right to pursue civil complaints. Margaret closes her eyes. In her mind, she's still sitting in seat 3A, sipping champagne, feeling like she'd finally won. But that moment lasted maybe 10 minutes before it all came crashing down. Was it worth it? Even now, sitting in this sterile security office with her future crumbling around her, part of her thinks, yes. For those 10 minutes, it was worth it. But that's the thing about Margaret. She never learned that stolen moments of happiness aren't real. They're just borrowed time before the bill comes due. And today, the bill came due in spectacular fashion. As Officer Ramirez begins the formal paperwork, his radio crackles. Ramirez, we have a situation at Gate 52. Another passenger claiming their boarding pass was switched. Can you respond? Everyone in the room freezes. Sharon Kim looks at Margaret with narrowed eyes. Did you work with someone? What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. But Officer Ramirez is already standing, suspicious. Ms. Whitmore, If there's something you're not telling us, now would be the time. I swear, I don't know anything about another incident. I worked alone. Officer Ramirez leaves Sharon to watch Margaret while he heads to Gate 52. When he arrives, he finds a familiar scene: an angry passenger, a confused gate agent, and security footage being reviewed. But this time, it's not Margaret on the video. It's a man in his 60s, using almost the exact same technique. The dropped wallet, the helpful passenger, the sleight of hand. Officer Ramirez's blood runs cold. This isn't isolated incidents. Someone is teaching people this scam. There's a network. Back in the security office, Sharon has been digging through Margaret's phone, legally seized as evidence, and what she finds is damning. A Facebook group called Travel Hacks and Loopholes, with over 3,000 members, posts trading tips on how to upgrade yourself at airports, videos demonstrating the boarding pass switch technique, comments from members celebrating successful scams. Margaret didn't invent this con. She learned it, and she's not the only one practicing it. Ms. Whitmore, Sharon says, pulling up the Facebook group on her screen. You need to see this. When Margaret sees the group, the community she'd been part of for months, displayed on an official TSA screen, her face drains of color. She thought she was being clever, trading tips with fellow travelers who understood the struggle. She never considered that she was part of an organized fraud network that the authorities would eventually notice. I want a lawyer, Margaret says quietly. That's your right, Sharon replies. But I want you to understand something. We've been monitoring this group for 6 weeks. We know about all the posts, all the techniques, all the participants. Today wasn't just about catching you. It was about catching everyone. And that's when Margaret realizes she wasn't special. She wasn't even particularly clever. She was just another easily caught criminal in an amateur fraud ring that law enforcement had been watching the whole time. At gates across Denver International Airport, security officers are simultaneously approaching passengers flagged from the Facebook group. The man at Gate 52, a woman at Gate 78, a couple at Gate 23. All of them using variations of the same boarding pass switch technique. All of them about to be detained. It's a coordinated sting operation, and Margaret just happened to be the first domino to fall. 30,000 feet above Colorado, Jessica Chen's flight to Miami has finally taken off. She's settled into seat 3A, trying to enjoy the first-class experience she paid for. But she can't stop thinking about what happened, so she does what any millennial would do. She posts about it. Within an hour, her tweet thread about the boarding pass scam has 5,000 retweets. Thread: a woman just tried to steal my first-class seat using the most elaborate con I've ever seen. Here's what happened. She details the dropped purse, the switch, the CCTV exposure. News outlets pick it up. Viral Twitter thread exposes airport first-class scam ring. Woman's quick thinking leads to major TSA fraud bust. How a boarding pass theft at Denver Airport uncovered a national fraud network. By the time Jessica lands in Miami, she has interview requests from 3 major news networks. The story has exploded, and Margaret Whitmore, who just wanted a few quiet hours in first class, has become the face of airline fraud across the country. Her mugshot appears on the evening news. Her Facebook profile is dissected by amateur internet sleuths. Her employer, a call center for an insurance company, releases a statement saying they're investigating the situation. Margaret's 15 minutes of fame aren't in first class. They're in infamy. The courtroom in Denver is surprisingly small for a case that got so much media attention. Margaret sits next to her public defender, wearing a different version of the same blazer she wore that day at the airport. Her hair is shorter. She looks older. The judge reviews her case. 5 counts of fraud. 3 counts of identity theft. 2 counts of violating TSA security regulations. The evidence is overwhelming. The CCTV footage, the Facebook group, the pattern of behavior. Ms. Whitmore, the judge says, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Margaret stands. Her voice is quiet but steady. I want to apologize to Jessica Chen and to everyone else I stole from. I convinced myself I was just working the system, that I was leveling an unfair playing field. But I was wrong. I was a thief. And I'm sorry, the judge nods. Ms. Whitmore, I'm sentencing you to 18 months probation, 300 hours of community service, restitution to the victims. and a permanent ban from flying with any commercial airline that operates in the United States. Additionally, you'll be placed on the TSA's watch list. Margaret nods. She expected worse, honestly. At least she's not going to prison. But as she leaves the courtroom, she realizes the real punishment isn't the legal consequences. It's that she can never fly again. She'll never sit in first class, economy, or anywhere in between. She'll never take a vacation to Hawaii, visit her sister across the country, or see her nieces grow up. For someone who wanted so desperately to experience the luxury of air travel, the ultimate karma is being permanently grounded. Back in Miami, Jessica Chen never forgot what happened that day. She kept the switched boarding pass as a reminder, not of the woman who tried to steal from her, but of how easily we judge others' lives from the outside. She never knew Margaret's story, never knew about the financial struggles, the desperation, the feeling of being left behind while everyone else moved forward. And while Jessica doesn't excuse what Margaret did, she understands that sometimes people make terrible choices when they feel invisible. Jessica started a blog about her experience, but she didn't use it to mock Margaret. Instead, she wrote about the inequality in air travel, the two-tier system that makes first-class passengers feel superior and economy passengers feel like cattle. She wrote about how the system itself breeds resentment. Her posts went viral again, but this time for a different reason. She started a conversation about the psychology of entitlement, the ethics of luxury goods, and how we as a society treat people who have less. Did Margaret's actions suddenly become justified? No, crime is crime. Theft is theft. But the story became more complicated. Then Karen tries to steal first-class seat and gets caught. It became a mirror, reflecting what happens when inequality meets desperation, meets opportunity. Airport security across the country updated their protocols after the Denver incident. CCTV monitoring increased. Gate agents received training to watch for boarding pass fraud. The Facebook group was shut down, and dozens of members faced legal consequences. Patricia, the gate agent, retired 6 months later. She'd seen enough drama for one career. Officer Ramirez received a commendation for his work uncovering the fraud network. And Margaret Whitmore? She finished her community service, paid her restitution, and now works at a nonprofit helping formerly incarcerated people find employment. She takes the bus everywhere. She's never setting foot in an airport again, but late at night, she still sometimes thinks about those 10 minutes in seat 3A. The champagne, the window view, the feeling of being someone who mattered. And then she remembers the handcuffs, the humiliation, the viral infamy, the permanent consequences. Was it worth it? She knows the answer now. It never was. It never could have been. Some lessons cost more than others, and Margaret's lesson cost her the sky itself. So the next time you're sitting at an airport gate, clutching your boarding pass, remember this story. Remember that the woman in the oversized sunglasses might not be who she pretends to be. Remember that security is always watching. And remember that in the age of CCTV and social media, there are no perfect crimes, only crimes that haven't been exposed yet. Margaret Whitmore thought she was clever enough to beat the system. But the system had cameras, and the cameras never blink. And that, dear viewers, is how a Karen's 15 minutes of first-class fantasy became a lifetime of consequences. If you enjoyed this story of airport karma, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more tales of entitled passengers who learned the hard way that crime doesn't pay, especially at 30,000 feet. Until next time, fly safe, play fair, and remember, the universe has a way of balancing the scales, even if it takes CCTV footage and a viral Twitter thread to do it.